Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. Enterprise AI isn't just a tool, it's the heartbeat of smart organizations like yours, helping to reinvent work to deliver higher growth, more customers, and better experiences. Join us as we discover how AI-powered work orchestration and automation is making things better for everyone: customers, employees, shareholders, and most importantly, you. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston. My guest today is Brian Halpin, the head of automation for SS&C. Brian has a long history of leading automation programs, both in industry and as a part of Blue Prism. But for the past couple of years, he has led a significant internal automation program across SS&C, which will be the focus of our chat today. Welcome, Brian. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, right, Brad. Great to be on the podcast. Look, I've been involved in automation, and specifically with Blue Prism, I guess, for the last kind of 11 years as a customer in various guises. I started off with the Bank of Ireland, running an automation program there, still one of our very important and large customers. And from there, I ended up at HSBC. So I was the global head of automation at HSBC. It's probably one of our largest customers, still very big users of Blue Prism across the globe. And then I joined Blue Prism about 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, and through the acquisition by SS&C, I was very involved in working with lots of our largest customers. A lot of banks, a lot of insurance companies, a lot of financial services companies, I guess, probably from my background. But then when the acquisition happened, one of the kind of the aspects of the acquisition by SS&C was that SS&C is an operations business, as you know, a large part of it is operations. And so
Right.
Not only were they interested in the product, but they were interested in, or the business, but interested in using the product as part of the organization and really embedding it. So post acquisition, I took on the role of rolling out Blue Prism across the entire organization. And so I've been doing that for the last 2 years, as well as engaging a lot with many of our customers and, sort of articulating our story, what we've been doing internally with those customers. So I guess a customer internally, externally, and spending a lot of time with customers over the last 11 years.
Right. And yeah, the internal program has certainly been an interesting and very compelling story, both internally and to the external world. And as you know, our CEO, Bill Stone, who led the acquisition of Blue Prism 3 years ago, was very quick to come forward and say, hey, we're going to drink our own champagne. We're going to apply automation to our own organization and really turn a lot of our workforce into digital employees. And man, here we are 2 years later, and the benefits that have been achieved have been pretty significant. Brian, maybe you could start by talking a little bit more about, the impetus for the internal automation effort at SS&C Technologies and what positioned this program, so early on to, Blue Prism joining SS&C.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at SS&C as a company, it's 27,000 people, software and services. And what's kind of interesting and unique about SS&C, I think, is all of the services that the company provides, operational services, are based on its own technology. So it's not like it does BPO services that are generic in the market. It only provides services based on technology it owns itself. But as an organization of 27,000 people providing services in the asset management, fund administration space, investment management space, they typically would be a perfect user of Prism, in the past. So they would be the typical kind of company that would benefit greatly from automation. Mm-hmm. So obviously that was part of the attraction, I guess, in the acquisition. They understood that this was part of the future of the nature of work that they were in. And so obviously acquiring the business, but then using it to really transform the way the company itself would operate was a key part of that. So the impetus really was about adding capacity to the company, adding a new form of capacity. Why? I mean, it's about controlling costs, protecting margins, as well as growing the business. And the biggest challenge most companies have, particularly operational companies have in growing their business, is just finding capacity to do more work. And in our case, we have, pretty unlimited availability of digital labor. And so really our only challenge in terms of growth, in terms of adding workforce, is trying to figure out how best to deploy this workforce, this digital workforce. But we've got a lot of it and we can use it. So really what the impetus, the opportunity is to really rethink some of our processes, rethink some of the way in which we can deliver services to customers, and really figure out how this digital workforce can be a complementary part of the way in which we deliver services to clients.
And why would you say that this was really a strategic move, not just a cost-cutting measure, as many initiatives, tend to be these days?
Yeah, I think if you, certainly there's a cost cutting aspect to it, right? I mean, that's the immediate thing that everybody thinks about. Like, can I do this work more cost effectively than I did it before? But what you start to see, it started with a more strategic mindset, which is we need capacity. We need new ways of getting work done. But what's been interesting to just see emerging is it really has created a new foundation of workforce capacity capability within the company. So if you look at the business now, and you might pick a chart of the company and sort of look at the stats behind the business, and you'd say, we've 27,000 people. But we've now 27,000 people. The business has grown substantially over those last 2 years. But we've got 2,500 digital workers to complement those 27,000 people. Plus we've got the people who know how to manage those digital workers. And so that's a foundation. I think of it a little bit like if you were talking to a telco and they said, hey, we put the wires in, right? We put the infrastructure in. And now what we're doing is layering, services and new things on top of that infrastructure. So even though we've delivered huge value, huge cost savings in terms of core digital workers, we're now starting to look at that and say, we've got the people in place now to manage them. We've got the digital workers in place. We're starting to do things like upskilling those digital workers with AI to make those digital workers smarter, to do more powerful things. We think even though we continually add more digital workers, we think even the ones that we've got in place, we're going to do so much more with those. It's so much more powerful we can make those digital workers. And as new technology emerges, as our product teams develop new capabilities, we're just going to keep adding on that capability onto those existing digital workers. So really the strategic move, I always liken it to, if you go back 20 years and companies maybe started to offshore work to low cost centers and create, shared service centers and these kind of big operational moves. They were quite strategic moves for those companies to make. To me, this kind of implementation of a digital workforce is a big strategic foundational capability similar to those kind of things. And now it's about capitalizing on that and adding more capability and getting more value out of that. So from that perspective, it feels like we're only starting in terms of the value we're going to get out of this.
Brian, let's talk about the benefits that have been achieved. You're 2 years into this program, and I know tracking benefits and making those visible to leadership and to shareholders has been a big part of what you've been doing. Talk about these benefits and how you're tracking them specifically. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So production today, we've got 100 digital workers. It's growing every week. We keep adding them in various parts of the business. One of the things that has allowed us to scale at that speed has been the distributed nature of the program. So the model that companies use, I think, is highly dependent on the nature of the company itself, right? So in our case, we've got quite a distributed business. So you've got multiple different business units that sort of tend to operate reasonably independent P&Ls. They've got independent leadership and so on. And so what we've effectively done if you think about, many companies have like centers of excellence to run their automation program. We have about 15 centers of excellence in each of these individual businesses, and we provide a sort of a layer of governance across them. But because of that, in effect, we've got digital workers being added right across the board by individual businesses on a daily, on a weekly basis. So we've got a large estate of digital workers across multiple businesses. We have probably the most important statistic for me is that we've over 300 people trained on building, managing, looking after those digital workers. And they're really important because most of those people have come from within the business. There's a lot of technology capability in there. There's a lot of business knowledge in there. There are new hires in there. So when we're hiring, we're prioritizing people with automation skills, because we realize that if I've got 10 open recs in my operational headcount, and if I hire maybe 2 people with automation skills, I'm going to get so much more value from those. We also recognize that people with automation skills can do an awful lot more than people without automation skills as we go forward. So we're really prioritizing finding, hiring, training, developing automation skills within our organization. And that will continue to grow, particularly AI. I think we'll have to continue to add on there. So that's a really important part of what we've developed. And then on the savings side, we're an organization of accountants. And so our savings are hard savings. They are very much calculated as headcount for dollar savings, right? So in often cases, we don't hire positions maybe where we were previously going to hire. We reallocate people into different positions. I think I know that we had 27,000 people 2 years ago. We still have 27,000 people, but we've grown revenue quite significantly in that period. Those allowed us to grow without having to add headcount for the kind of nature of the processing that we're doing. We have also, and Bill has talked about this on previous earnings, where we've significantly increased our investment in R&D, and some of the savings in this has allowed us to reinvest into R&D activities. So it's interesting, different companies I've been involved in, there's often a temptation to sort of try and, talk about savings in a more generic sense. Oh, it's cost avoidance, it's hours back to business, or we're very much in the mode of, hard dollars and cents, right? And so that's what we see in these savings. So, but what I would say is, and the one thing to remember is this is nothing new, right? This is like process efficiency, it's organizational effectiveness, it's offshoring, it's all of the standard operational improvement activities that companies have done for years. And so what we've been very conscious of is not to try and reinvent the wheel on the way in which we calculate efficiency and the way in which we calculate savings. So we very much blend into the existing framework that within the company for doing that.
We talked earlier in the intro section about your background running large automation programs at some very large banks. You certainly achieved some pretty significant benefits there as well. With regard to this experience, what has enabled you to achieve even higher benefits at a faster pace?
Yeah, I think I get this conversation all the time, and I'm reflecting on it a lot myself. And I think I always come down to 2 things, and they're both around the same topic, which is people. So one is the operating model that we deploy. I mentioned earlier, we've quite a distributed model, which means we've got multiple COEs, which means we can see pace and speed, and we've got effectively multiple teams executing. We don't have bottlenecks as a result, right? Each individual team controls its own priorities, its own funding, its own benefits. It controls how much to put into the program, how much they get out of the program. So you avoid a lot of the large scale program bottlenecks you often see in some organizations, but in big central programs. But what and how that maybe differs slightly from previous programs I've been involved in only differs in the nature of the company itself. So one of the things I've definitely learned is that the easiest way to progress, at the end of the day, automation, digital workers, whatever phrase you put on it, it's only operations. I know we all like to think of it as cool technology and AI and buzzy. It's operations, and
Right.
it's just another form, another way of getting work done. And as such, a lot of when you really embrace and embed yourself in operations, you realize that, okay, the automation bit is about executing the task or executing the piece of work. But within operations is like, you're really focused on things like SLAs and turnaround time and risk management and regulatory and audit. And these are the really important things that exist within operational structures. Business continuity, for example, hugely important. And rather than doing something different, you just embrace the model that already exists. I mean, do this for 20, 30 years, right? And all of those structures exist. So if I walked into a company tomorrow morning and they had a very centralized operational organization, I wouldn't try to build a federated sort of distributed model. Well, why? You would go with the flow of the organization as it stands, and that makes life a hell of a lot easier. All you're doing is introducing a new way of getting work done. Don't get sort of too caught up in trying to do something brand new. So that definitely, if I look at what we did in previous companies and compare how they're slightly different, they're only different because of the nature of those organizations. So that's kind of the first big thing I would say. The second one, which is really to the people one, is I think it's just so important. We talk a lot about accountability and ownership for these processes, for these digital workers in the business itself. And it's easy to say those words, but it's really hard to really understand it and get it embedded in people's thinking. And what that means to me is that if I'm a head of operations for a payment function or a lending function or onboarding, that when I come into work in the morning, I look at my organization and I realize I've got 200 people and I've got 20 digital workers, and I control what they do. I make a decision about how many people I put to manage my digital workers and how many people I put to manage my manual operations. And I need to feel I control both of those things. And the example I'll give of that, and I know there's a little bit of a long-winded answer on this, but I want to just give an example of that. And I think this is really human nature. I learned this one very early on. If I go to you, Brad, and let's say, Brad, you're running an onboarding function in a bank, and I say to you, can you give me some of your best people to work with me because I want to automate your function? You're probably by human nature not going to give me your best people to work with me because you're going to keep your best people for you because you're going, hey, I'm going to get a job done. Brian, you're asking me to give for you, Brad, to give your work away to me to automate it. I go, I want to keep my job. This doesn't sound very in my best interest, right? However, if I come to you and I say, Brad, I want to enable you to be a better manager, and I'm going to help you automate your own business. It's all your control with your own people. You will put your best people on it, right? Because those people will want the better career option. To get it done, if you're accountable for it, you put your best people on it. So, I think that's the key to all of this is allowing. I used to always say it's allowing the operational people to be the heroes in the story, not the techie people. And so I think that's just hugely important. It's hard to do because it's all out of people's comfort zones and they hear tech and they go look for somebody else. But it really is about a change of mindset for business people to realize that it is part of their future.
It's not being done to them. It's being done for them and by them. They're part of the change process. It sounds like.
Yeah. The analogy or the simile I'd always give would be if we were talking about marketing today and I said, hey, Brad, you're a marketing director. Do you know anything about digital marketing? And if you said no, we're not in a job, right? Because the world has gone digital marketing. Operations is going digital. It's going AI. We all know that. We can see it all around us. So it's kind of getting people to see that and that's part of their future and provide the training and the support and the technology and the tools to make that easy to happen within those organizations.
How would you say that this initiative has changed the mindset of the company in terms of things like product innovation and product extensions and bringing a new approach to how SS&C solves customer problems?
Yeah, I think that's been a really interesting thing for me to sort of observe because I look at both sides of the coin, how it's changed Blue Prism as a company as well as how it's changed SS&C. If I look at Blue Prism initially, what I'd say is that we go back 2.5 years ago, Blue Prism was we were a software vendor. We had a piece of
Mm-hmm.
software and we sold the software, and we didn't really understand what our customers necessarily did with that software. We were one step removed from that equation. Now that we use it, we've got a lot of usage of it. We really have a different perspective on the world, and we have a much more sort of empathetic view of what our end users are doing, because we are our own end user. And I think as a result, the conversations we have internally about our product roadmap, about features, about what our product should do, what challenges our customers have, is much more focused on how do we solve a business problem for a customer, not just how do we give them a new feature. And when we talk about features, we say, how will that help them maybe accelerate onboarding, or how would that accelerate KYC? It's a much more business led conversation. I think that means Blue Prism will become a much stronger partner for businesses as we go forward, much more so than many of our competitors who are probably
Mm-hmm.
more technically focused. And so that's one. SS&C as a company, I think, has realized that it has an alternative way of delivering services on the services side. So I think
Mm-hmm.
many of our service offers that go out the door now fully embed automation as part of it. So now I'd say we've got technology, we've got offshoring options, and we've got digital workers that we bring into the mix. And I think that makes us a little bit different, unique, stronger in the marketplace. We can automatically include automation, digital workers, AI as part of all of our service offerings. And that's happening right now. We're winning new deals as a result of that. It's very powerful, I think. And then the product extensions is probably really interesting. And I think this is where, when we look at all the software products we have in the company, and we look at our wealth and investment technology business, we look at our GIDS business, or our global businesses, and what we both use those technologies as a service provider, but we also customers who just use the software.
Mm-hmm.
What we've identified is the fact that we know what those end users are doing because we do it ourselves. And what we've started to do is build digital workers that execute the work that an end user might have to do. And we can offer that as an extension to our product. And so we've successfully done that in a few examples. We recently have launched an extension of our algorithmics product. So we have our algorithmics credit manager, and we have, what we've looked at that and said, okay, in that product, there are a couple of personas, a couple of activities typically that end users are doing. And then we've gone ahead and built digital workers to mimic what those end users would do. And we've effectively then offered that as a new feature or extension of the product. And that would then be interfacing with our product, but also with the end user's own systems. So connecting those two worlds together. So I think it's a very powerful opportunity for us. It's a very powerful addition for our customers. And we've got, dozens and dozens of software products at SS&C. And I think we'll kind of layer that automation capability on top of many of those products over the next while.
Excellent. Brian, what are some of the lessons learned from this internal automation program that are applicable even to the small to mid-sized financial services companies, some of whom don't even believe that automation and AI is relevant to them?
Yeah, I think it's, we use it in all parts of our business, from very small business units to some of our largest business units. So we have made a decision that everybody should use it. And so we have lots of examples in all areas. What I think, depending on the size of the business, you might think of different reasons why you might want to use it. I think the most important thing is to think about what is the challenge in your business that you're trying to solve for. And it could be about speed. It could be about risk. It could be you're trying to grow your business. It could be about capacity. It could be about integration or, error management or whatever. So it's whatever is important to you. Like when we think about scale, we're usually thinking about businesses that are really trying to save, millions of dollars or whatever. If you're in a small business, you got 10, 15 people, maybe you're not trying to save millions of dollars, but you might be trying to reduce your risk, or you might be trying to reduce errors, or you might be trying to provide an overnight service that you can't do, or turnaround time that you're trying to improve for your clients, which might be really important to you. So it really depends on what it is that you're trying to solve for. The other thing I would say is that certainly if you're a customer of SS&C, we have many customers that have similar sets of problems. And so what we're actually trying to do is work with lots of our customers and say, hey, you're in a similar industry. We've got 1,000 customers like you who all operate in similar industries. And so we've probably already solved some of the problems you have for another customer somewhere. And that's something that we can work with you on and, save you the time and energy of solving for that particular, small problem that might be, as I say, we can solve because we can do it for 100 customers, 200 customers. So, I think it kind of comes down to what is the business problem you're trying to solve? What's the benefit you're trying to achieve? And that's how you make it, you make sense of it, I guess, for your business.
Perfect. Brian, it's been a real pleasure talking to you about the internal automation program. Let's keep drinking our own champagne, as they say. And I'm sure we will be for many years to come. But thanks for sharing your perspective and your lessons learned and your thoughts on how this has changed our company and the opportunity that it presents to change the operations in our customers and even in companies that aren't customers of ours yet. So pretty exciting stuff. And thanks for being here. I wish you the very best.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of enterprise AI, subscribe now. The future of work is here.